And this evening, I'll be talking with Eric Nash of the Almost Famous Minute, which is one of a podcast which takes the movie Almost Famous and dissects it minute by minute. I recently was a guest. Well, probably by the time this comes out, the episodes that I appeared on will have gone up. But Eric has also done the WATCHMEN Minute, which I was also on. So let me just bring in Eric, and we will get to talking. Hey, how's it going, Eric?
Hey, Chad. Good to see you.
So it's been a while since we talked or have seen each other.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's been a number of years since we actually were in person with talking with each other.
Which I think that was Baltimore Con.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that was last time, and the first time would have been Reading.
Yeah,
the good old
the good old CGS days. But so as I mentioned before I brought you in, this is your second movie you've done,
right?
For the minute by minute. Can we talk a little bit about why you chose Almost Famous and what the movie means for you personally?
Yeah, I mean it's this whole big genre. There's well over 150 different podcasts now, and I'm just two of them. And we've had meetups too, 3 over the past 3 years. But yeah, I mean, the first one was Star Wars Minute, and if I certainly had my druthers, that's what I would have done myself. But we don't step on the toes too often. Every now and then, in the genre, there are some different groups of people that happen to hit on the same movie at about the same time. Even Clerks was one, Princess Bride was another. But Almost Famous just came about because I actually kind of enjoy music a bit more than I do movies. So doing something like a stab at this format for a movie, but having it be a very music oriented one just made a lot of sense for me. Something I have in mind for the future, I've had in mind for quite a while actually, is a Beatles related one, and that's my favorite band. And because I'm also a co-host for another podcast called Feels Like Weezer, where we go song by song, track by track through all of Weezer's catalog, and we're only four albums in, and they keep putting albums out, so we kind of feel like it might be never ending, much like the Star Wars Minute guys have a feeling.
So kind of on to the Weezer thing. I didn't know until just the other day when I watched the movie for the first time, because I have a 3.5-year-old, but I didn't know that they did a song for Frozen 2. Well, they kind of did like the main song, a version of the main song for Frozen 2. You're going to cover that, right?
Well, yeah, I know my co-host is going to be super excited when we get around to that, because we are going chronologically, so it's going to be quite a while. But there's even another song, something about like We Are All Insects, that he just found out about himself a couple of weeks ago. So he made sure we got that added into the spreadsheet at the right time for when it came out 10, 15 years ago or whatever it was. Very kids oriented music video, at least, that he came across.
So tell me a little bit about the process for this. It seems like there's a lot of work that goes into just getting ready for recording. I mean, because when the times I've done this with you, you'll send me like the script for the minutes that we're covering and the video parts of it. You have to do you put those together yourself, or are they available somewhere?
Well, I definitely find the script out there in the ether, but then I massage it a lot myself. I make sure I try to get everything a lot closer to what is said versus what whatever site happens to have a version of the script up that is a little off in spots sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's the video clips I provide as well. So I actually I essentially need a DVD copy just to get to rip myself. Rip it on your computer, and then there's certain little programs that the community knows about, and most of us do this aspect of actually using these little programs that get the whole movie divided up into however many second segments that you want. So there is another podcast called The Shining 237, 2 minutes and 37 seconds at a time, because of the room number 237.
Right.
And and making it something longer than a minute is a nice idea, because that way you don't feel quite so burdened with the minute, and if you have a long movie like the Watchmen minute that we did, that was the director's cut, which was 186 minutes. So, and we actually had just under 100 hours of recorded output that we put out for that show. But that process is interesting. I enjoy how it just happens to fall sometimes. Where 1 minute ends and the next minute begins, whether it happens to be, if it's a really funny movie, if there's a joke and a punchline that doesn't get quite heard right, well, that's just this little weirdness that happens, and I think is really interesting when that does. But other times it happens perfectly. It happens, I think for your minutes, we had the part where the T-shirt of Stillwater, their first T-shirt, and it just happens to be, right on the held up full screen view of zoom in of the T-shirt, right at the end of the previous minute and the beginning of your minute.
And then I know the minute that the last minute that I'm on is probably it leads into my favorite part, where they go to the house party.
Yeah.
I bet that was probably one of the more popular minutes people were asking for.
It's hard to say, Yeah, I mean, a lot of people really gravitated toward Lester Bangs and Philip Seymour Hoffman's portrayal there. That was pretty big for some people. Others, I was surprised not as many people went for at the end of what you're talking about, the scene at the house, the "I'm a Golden God" moment, which I love to think about and grab those for. I actually have that the audio of him saying "I'm a Golden God" at the beginning of my outro music for each episode.
So, what can you, just before I know we're already a little bit into this, but can you give us just a basic for those people that may be watching this that haven't seen Almost Famous, can you kind of give a overall summary of what the movie's about and kind of how it came to be?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, we have what we generally know of the past 20 to 30 years, maybe. The writer-director, Cameron Crowe. He actually, one of his first things he did in the movie business was he actually wrote the book first, that was then adapted into Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But then from then on, he went and did Say Anything. Is that right? I haven't even seen all of his movies. I know I've seen that one, but it's been a long time for that one. But some of the more recent ones, like the We Bought a Zoo. So Cameron Crowe, before that, though, what he did as a youth was he went on the road. He kind of was doing some bit of rock critic journalism, in high school, and then independent and Cream, and then eventually for Rolling Stone as a youth, as a teenager. So that story, or multiple stories of his youth, of that time period for him, kind of got amalgamated into the story that he wanted to tell. And it's actually a twofold story, in my opinion. One where he goes on tour, or part of a tour at least, mostly on the bus, but there's even the infamous plane sequence too, which isn't shown on planes. I was on a flight, and I came across Almost Famous as being a possibility for me to watch, and I just had to go ahead and sit and see. And the plane sequences, for good reason, isn't shown. But so there's an amalgamated band, as well as these groupies that don't like to be called groupies, called Band-Aids. The groupies, they're also, in my mind, at least, especially the main one, Penny Lane, played by Kate Hudson. Um, she's kind of an amalgamated version of 2 or 3 or 4 different ladies of back then, of the early 70s. So there's that side of the story, but then there's also this other part of the story that I think it was important for him to tell about his relationship with his mother mainly. His sister is involved a little bit too. His dad, unfortunately, in the movie, actually, I think I just found out the other day in doing some research that it was in a director's cut scene that was taken out. His dad is mentioned as having passed away a few years prior.
Okay.
But that was not the case in real life. His dad was around. I'm awfully sure. I'm not totally sure when he, for whatever reason, was out of the picture, whether he passed away or something else. But so there's those two sides of the story. You know, his burgeoning career and his family life. But you know, the thing is that this main character is not called Cameron Crowe in the movie. He's given a different name as well. You know, so all these names are changed to protect the innocent. You know, however, Penny Lane is someone that was real, and there actually was a real Stillwater as well, but they actually had to kind of finagle apparently a little bit with that real I think 60s or 70s ish band, you know, that was at least in some form or another still around in the 90s when they were starting to make it, and it came out in 2000.
So I know that, like with the Watchmen, you had a co-host. Do you? I know. I was looking back, you know, through your episodes you've already released. Have you had like a rotating co-host position this time, or
it's essentially it's just a co-host in name at the time of, you know, of the episode. There's nothing, no actual responsibilities that they need to think about or take care of, you know, beforehand. Besides just, you know, getting ready, just a little bit of research, you know, just watching a minute a few times at least, if not several or more, like I generally do. But you know, and that's something, you know, I certainly put the word out. I asked my co-host if he was interested in this movie enough to co-host with me, and he declined, but he actually has been on as a guest. You know, he liked the movie well enough, you know, to be a guest. But yeah, it takes a certain movie to want to be a co-host, or at least maybe there are cases in the community where it's the person you're going to be co-host with. There is an upcoming Way to Dune minute where the guy's seen it, the girl hasn't, and so that's a big thing in some cases where one co-host out of 2 or 3 hasn't seen it, and it's there watching it as it goes, you know, as you go through it minute by minute. So it's really important in that case. It seems like for spoilers not to be divulged. There was actually even one movie called Movie by Minute, Mystic Pizza Minute, where both, I think it was 2, maybe even 3 co-hosts that none of them had seen it. They decided to watch it for some reason and do a podcast on it for the 90 or so minutes. It wasn't, I don't think it's that long of a movie, but.
And how long is Almost Famous?
Yeah, it's just over 2 hours. And that's for this theatrical cut. I could have done the director's cut, and that would have been another 42 minutes of footage that was taken out, that was shot. And Cameron Crowe was suggested by given the advice from Steven Spielberg before going about shooting it, just after, you know, I don't even know if Spielberg actually read the whole thing, but at least, you know, was shown a treatment or something, maybe at least, given a spiel at least. But Spielberg's advice was shoot everything, you know, it's like, so apparently Cameron Crowe really took that to heart and did so. And there's actually even more than 42 minutes of unused footage. That's for darn sure. Well, I mean, there's always more than that, but.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite character in the movie that you tend to gravitate towards, or?
Because I'm a bit more on the music related aspect. I kind of think about that a bit more. I don't focus on it solely. That's for darn sure. But maybe, and he doesn't have many lines. I mean, there's actually the Silent Ed character, the drummer, that is silent
except for one line, much like Kevin Smith. So I came up with the idea of calling him Silent Ed, much like Silent Bob. But the other band member that's the next least talkative is Larry Fellows, played by Mark. I keep getting it confused lately, but with this other director, I've been hearing a lot more and more about. He's been around for a while too. Mark Romanek, I think, is the director. Mark Kozelek, I'm pretty sure it's Kozelek, is the member of Red House Painters, or the main person behind Red House Painters band. And what's that? Sun Kill Moon is apparently the other band. I need to investigate that band as well. They both have been around for quite a number of years, way back there around 2000. Prior to that, and he and the bass player and the drummer were holding down the rhythm. good idea to have them holding down the rhythm, be real musicians, and asked to act a bit too. Versus the other two characters are Russell and Jeff, and they are definitely actors. Well, actually, the one, Jason Lee, he was a skateboarder.
Yeah. So at first I thought you were doing, when you picked Almost Famous after Watchmen, I thought you had maybe a thing for Billy Crudup.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that. I can only really think of two other movies, and that's like that Spotlight. Oh, and then he also did the JFK, not what's her name, the wife, JFK's wife, Jackie. That was the name of the Jackie. He was in that as the reporter. Okay. Interestingly enough.
So, tell me a little bit about the guests you've had on, besides yours truly. I mean, I could talk about myself all day, but have you? I know when you did the Watchmen, when you had, a couple people you had a couple of the actors. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Through my co-hosts on Watchmen Minute, his tweeting and so forth, I believe he was able to get in touch with a couple not huge actors, but I mean the Vietnamese lady who meets an untimely demise, but takes a good stab at the comedian. So she had a good few lines, and then a couple lines also for the young kid, Bernie, the two Bernies. He's the Bernard, I believe, of the two, reading the comic. Okay. And his role certainly is expanded a lot more when you get to the not only the director's cut, but the ultimate that has the in and outs, the going into the comic book scenes.
So who have you had so far for Almost Famous?
I definitely have been pulling plenty from the Movies by Minutes community. There's also a little bit of hope to have on. I definitely have some minutes scheduled with at least one of the other. I'm part of a network. Both this show and Smells Like Weezer are part of Pantheon Podcasts, and there's well over 30. There's 38 podcasts now on that network, and one of them is Muses, which has a lot to do with groupies and so forth. That's what they choose, and that word is even used a little bit in this movie, but. So the two co-hosts of that, they are definitely scheduled for a bit later on. But I definitely would hope that some more Pantheon people possibly can fill in, maybe because I do have my schedule pretty well filled out for the latter half of the movie that I'm coming up on. And I am up against the wall a little bit, versus how I started, which I got a lot recorded, over the span of 3 or 4 months. And I wasn't editing too quickly at that point. I was kind of taking my time a bit more. So I've gotten more towards
getting stuff recorded and then getting it edited, getting recorded and getting it edited and putting it out. But any other possible, I do certainly have some ins with at least a couple different people that were in the movie, as well as a little bit some people that are a little more celebrity-ish, maybe, some comedians and so forth that are just adjacent
fans of the movie,
adjacent to the business, but are fans at least. Do seem to be fans. Yeah.
So are there, I know you talked about possibly doing a Beatles project. Are there any other movies once you finish this one that you would like to tackle next?
Well, that's interesting that you say that. I just recorded last night with or yesterday with my Feels Like Weezer co-host, and because we were covering, so it's a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks out probably when our Simpsons special episode comes out, because Weezer was just on The Simpsons a week or so ago now. So we're covering that for one special episode, and because that movie episode is called The Hateful 8-Year-Olds. It just so happens for the past couple of months I had been thinking about, and I even reached out to the people that were doing the Tarantino Minute, and they kind of went from doing the first 2 movies of Tarantino's 1 minute at a time, and then they did Jackie Brown 5 minutes at a time, and then they might be kind of done with it, but they might come back to it too. So I even reached out to them and I said, hey, I have an idea. I'd like to do Hateful 8 minutes. So again, I'm doing that thing that I talked about earlier where, hey, what if you don't do it minute by minute? What if you make it longer? But I would probably put out, on a weekly basis, covering 8 minutes, and probably get it out pretty quick that way. And then I would move on to that Beatles project I have in mind.
Did I ask you what your favorite part of the movie was? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
No. What was your favorite part of the movie then?
I think it's just some of the more subdued scenes between William and Penny. I think that's, I told you about like the kind of the 2 aspects, but then that's like this third, almost middle ground aspect that comes about pretty interestingly at the end. That just William and Penny's relationship, and any of those scenes where they're just together talking pretty quiet, whether it's pretty close to the beginning or in the middle or the end, that happens like those 3 times. There's like 3 points, I think, where they're up at the top of the ramp behind the venue, being the first, I think.
And so where can people go to find, you also have merchandise, right? You've made some t-shirts.
Oh yeah. I'm even wearing the one with the logo. I'm wearing that one right now. That's the first one I made. I've created that logo, so I said, well, I'll just throw that on a shirt. But I've gone on and kind of I've tried to replicate some of the t-shirts that we've seen in the movies. So there's the one that Vic Munoz, the Jay Baruchel actor, is playing the character. Vic Munoz is a huge Led Zeppelin fan, so he's wearing a t-shirt that he kind of, it looks like he probably kind of custom created, and then there's even the Cream magazine, their kind of logo thing of a milk jar saying, an animated personified milk jar saying "Boy Howdy," So I changed it because Jeff Beebe is wearing it. I changed it from saying "Boy Howdy" to Jeff Beebe, and of course I throw on the handwritten version of the name of the podcast, Almost Famous Minute, as kind of my thing. I'll just throw on as some kind of little identifier to make it stand out a little bit more from the original version and so forth. But that's all through the TeePublic website. It's teepublic.com. And you find my stuff, teepublic.com/user/luckymustard.
I'll include if you want to send me the links, I'll include them in the show notes.
Sure.
And where can people go to download the podcast?
Yeah, there's definitely the big place, because I'm on this network. It's very easy to find if you just either Google or type in pantheonpodcast.com. And like I said, there's like 38 different podcasts there now. So
there's a big mosaic type of thing of with my logo being one of it, as well as the Feels Like Weezer. But we're on almost everything just by being on that network. They've got us pushed out to pretty much everything you can think of besides like SoundCloud is like one of the few that doesn't get that treatment of being able to be pushed out automatically. And I've never tried to get it further, hooked up with that one. I got it's on so many others.
So kind of besides, what kind of music are you into at the moment? Bands, groups?
At the moment, I mean, gosh, Weezer is coming out with their new album this coming week, or actually apparently it's been like, it would have been like right now essentially, but it's been delayed a month. But they just put out their second single for it, Hero or Heroes. But yeah, I mean, other music. I mean, I just jump around quite a bit, from classic rock era to the '90s alternative and stuff in between too. Sometimes some '80s Talking Heads or some punk with the Clash. A lot of big stuff, but every now and then there's some more indie stuff too. That, I mean, something that was going to be big that's actually from my hometown, or one of my two hometowns, Cincinnati or Dayton. From Dayton is where I currently live. Back in the early to mid '90s, and I actually did get to see them play once. Brainiac, the band Brainiac, and they were just ready to sign to a major label. And they could have essentially been, I think they could have been like the next Nirvana right after them.
Yeah.
And nothing else really took their place. New metal came about, and all the pop bands happened, but they had something special, I thought. But unfortunately, the lead singer keyboardist died in a car accident.
Oh yeah. So I guess I'll be we're talking on Tuesday night for what minute 53, is that correct?
That sounds right. Maybe 54.
Okay.
52.
It's in the 50s.
Yeah.
Because I know minute 52 kind of sticks in my mind, because I just being a comic fan and a DC fan, 52, and
oh yeah, that's true.
You're probably aware with all that, since we met through the Comic Geek Speak, and that's one of their big
52.
Yeah. So are you reading comics anymore these days, or just?
I'm not heavily reading comics right now. I mean, I could see picking up something again. I mean, I have a pull list, but in this COVID-19 era, I actually did pick up a few books when my comic shop when they were able to open back up. But I'm just doing it curbside only though still.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a huge Batman fan, and I can't imagine ever not getting Batman, at least the main Batman title. I'll always get that in somehow a physical copy, and because my collection for that, I'm pretty sure I have a nonstop, all the way back into the late 300s.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much where mine 80s runs too.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with me, and stay safe, stay healthy. We'll talk to you on Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And Almost Famous, great movie, and it's a fun movie. And then thank you for asking me to come on and talk about it with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you could.
All right. Well, we'll talk then, and we'll see you later.
Yep. Thanks a lot. See you.
All right. Later.